Hi everyone. Welcome to the lab demo for week 3. We are going to build something on top of what we had built on Studio 2. So we'll have some detailed understanding on the JE architecture, the web client, named beans, and an essential component called EJB, which is which stands somewhere in between the web server and the database. So EJB is the one that implements all the web logic and not the web logic, sorry, the business logic, and is the one that interacts with the database. For this lab, there is not no access to database. However, you learn the things in step by steps. So we'll have some more understanding on what dependency injection is and the related annotations. So from this part, you can see this is the one that we have built in the last week, and we are going to add some business functionality to the down part here, and some extra um, business functionality for the loan managed loan payment calculator, and comparing different properties with the price and finding out what's the cheapest cost per room. So this is best per room. So this is like a template provided to you. You need to develop a few things on top of things. For example, after this table and after these two buttons, you need to add some more text boxes, some more command buttons, some more text boxes, some more command buttons, link, likewise, and again another table structure where you have two labels, and then the row consisting of a label, text box, then a label and a text box, likewise. Uh, so this is like a one row consisting four different components. And then the interesting part here is selecting a list box, drop downs, how to do that. And here also there is one more interesting thing, like the contact, how to search by contact, the list of contacts popping up here, and all those extra details. All right, let's build our project and then we'll come back to this and have a little bit of discussion. So if you see JPA property repository implementation class, uh, forget about what JPA means at the moment, because we are not going to do database in this week. But this is like a future reference purpose as Java Persistence API. So property repository implementation class is that uh, is a class that implements property repository. Uh, and what property repository is? It's an interface that has some method uh, declarations like add property, remove property, list all properties, search properties, basically the CURD operations, like just the method declaration. And JPA property repository implementation class will be implementing that. And you can see a list of few important methods such as get all contact people, get property by contact person. So these are methods you will see implemented inside property repository implementation class, and it is present in the EJB because getting contact people, search property by contact person, there is some kind of business logic involved, uh, basically depending upon what you have selected here, clicking on the button, these methods will be invoked. And then you have loan management. I think this is pretty much we did in week 1. However, In this week, you'll be able to see that how we are using that at the rate EJB annotation to put a dependency in the manage bean and call them. So let's get started with this. So first, what I'll do, I'll create my own workspace. So keep my workspace here. This is my workspace. Um, lab week 3. I'll create a folder for week 3 demo. Oh, it's already there. I'll just reuse it. So what I'll just do is I'll use this as my uh, workspace. I'll use my Eclipse. I'll select week 3 demo as my workspace and then launch. Okay, go to the workbench. It's empty. It's fine. Uh, so first is I need to create a common project. First, I'll create the whole structure. Uh, First, create a normal project. Let it be a Java one. It should be under the W3 demo my workspace. I'll call it W3 demo common and just use my default JRE. Create separate folders for sources and classes. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, for the libraries, I need to add external jar, which I keep it in a list of jar files. The jar JAPI, and then say finish. So it'll prompt you to ask Java perspective. So okay, that's fine. And there's uh, nothing code in between. What I'll do, I'll probably use the codes, existing codes, so that I can explain the things rather than coding myself. All right. So once I do that, this is done. Yeah, rephrase it. That's fine. You'll get warnings because a lot of sometimes we are importing things and we're not using it because some of the annotations we are using and importing and not using it. That's fine. Don't worry about the warnings. There's no error, which is good. So in this, you have a few uh, few things such as uh, address type, contact person, um, loan, and property. So these are all entity classes. pretty much they can be used as a managed bean because they have these annotations. Same for the not loan. Um, and then contact person can also be a managed bean. Address can also be a managed bean. But they may be managed bean, but unless and until it is used or invoked somewhere, they are not going to be instantiated. So yeah, so and property repository, it's the interface as I was saying, and then you have another interface called compare property, where you can add properties and remove properties and uh, and probably send out the best property, the ID of the property with the best price per room. This is an interface, so you have to implement it. Uh, you have to write the implementation in the EJB bean where you implement this specific interface. Same for it's very similar to your monthly payment calculator. You see these guys, they have this annotation at the rate remote. So you need to have something like at the rate stateless, stateful, or singleton to denote if your class is an EJB, and implement these interfaces and write the definitions for the methods declared here. Okay, once the common is done, what we'll do, we'll create, I'll close all this. Okay, I'll create a EJB project, other EJB project. Next, I'll call it Week3 Demo E, just like my notation. I want to use a target. Okay, this has to be in a target runtime. So I will simply switch into Java EE perspective and first create a server here. And so I have my local host as the server name, and sorry for the server's host name, and for the server name I'll just keep it as week3 demo. Next, I'll use find out where glass face is located. This is the location of the glass face, and that's the JDK home path. Because the name is changed, I'll probably rename it. And yeah, so that's the name of the server, running in which domain, and the path. And I'll use jar archives for deployment. So next, so finish. So it'll just create a runtime server for me. Now I can create an EJB project. So here it goes, it's in my favorite list. Call it W3 demo EJB. Good. The runtime is the server that I just created. EJB 3.2. Default configuration for the server. I just need to check EJB is there, Glassface is there, Java is there. Okay. Cool. And go next. This is where my source folder for the build path. And oh god. once it creates a skeletal structure for you, what we'll do is again copy the source files from the EJB module. These are the source files. Copy it to the demo that I'm doing right now. Paste it here. I'll just come here and do refresh, and it should come here. So there are some errors. It cannot import this. Okay. Okay. So it's very simple. The first thing is I need to import the common, because common has this most of the packages. So I'll go to the build path. In the projects, I need to add the common. Say okay. In the library, I need to add the J YE API 7 and just apply close. Everything should go away. Cool. So what you have here is again a common instance. Probably when it loads up, it has these default static objects created and put into the repository in this JPA implementation class. So this is the class which has the annotation at the stateless. That means it is an EJB implementer class where the business logic is written, and it has a this EJB has a list of property. It's a property list which is an array list, and during the initialization of this EJB, the constructor will be called, and you can see to this specific list, default list. From the common instance, properties will be added. The static properties are added to this list, and then this list can be used anywhere you will see. Okay, and then what it also has, we just discussed this, and yeah, you're familiar with this, right? Which has the monthly calculator bean to calculate the interest. This is again an EJB bean that has the business logic to calculate interest. And the new thing that you have in addition to the other two things is compare properties session bin. So if you see this specific part of comparing properties, basically you'll put the ID of the property and add compare, and you can put the ID here and do remove compare. So once you add let's say 1 2 3 few property and say add compare 1, add compare 2, it'll save that into this set, with a set of property. So once you add, it'll add it to this set, and when you say best per room, it's gonna call this method best per room, and it's going to loop through the list or the set of the properties and find out which room has the best price or the least price per room, and return the ID of that specific property, and that ID will be displayed here. So that business logic is implemented in compare property session bean. All right, so let's move on to the last the web component part. New new web component, dynamic web component, web project. That's fine, it's there. So I'll just call it week 3 demo web. the default location, use the runtime, dynamic module 4, that's fine. Configuration, for the time being you can choose Java Faces 2.3, or if you want to change it, uh, you can change it here, or you can change it in the Faces config. Should be fine, not a big deal. Make sure you have these four selected and have the appropriate versions. Say okay, and yeah, go next. Generate the web XML. Anyway, we'll update it, but this is the context route. That means the project runs. This would be the route of from where you'll retrieve pages. That means from the context route. So that the URL has a pattern, right? The transfer protocol, HTTP, HTTPS, and then the server, which is localhost, and then the port number of the server, which is responding, which is 8080, and then the context route and the resources that you are trying to uh, request. All right, there you go. That includes JSF 2.2 on the system class path. Very good. And we have this things done. Configure JSSL in the deployment system. Fantastic. Then finish. Alrighty. So once this is done, this is empty at the moment. So instead of writing the files, what I'll do is I'll go here. I will copy resources and the web pages, and I will reuse it here. Okay, and I'll again go back, and I also need the manage beans and controllers. I'll copy them, and then I'll go to the demo, go to the source, and paste. One more thing in here is okay, let's first have a look. Refresh this. So from the faces config, the tree source, it's using 2.2. So the projects which has 2.3, in those projects you need to have @faces config on your manage bean to make it compatible and run. If you don't have @faces config annotation in your manage beans, you probably better use 2.2. So you need to make a change here and here. All right, that's in the faces config. Once it's done, it's good. And Glasswizard web XML, might see an error. That's fine. It'll be done during the runtime. We're not worried. And then the web XML. So it includes the faces servlet engine, and that's a servlet mapping. But we will just update it with our 3.1s and stuff. So we'll just use one of the existing web XML. So I will use one that I have used before. which looks exactly something like this, which was provided to you in the week one. The same thing that we have used for our uh, loan manage calculator in week one. So basically, it's not using the higher versions. It's using web app 3.1 versions. I'll just use it directly. So if you look at the design, you can see it is using four schemas. It is using is four. We're basically using 3.1 instead of that, and having faces index HTML as our welcome file. All right. So you can see the updated design here. All right. Cool. Okay, you might see um, always having a lot of warnings. That's fine. So Java resources are having errors. What you got to do is simple on the projects. Add the common project because it is referencing in the classes a lot of files in the common. So I'll add that. In the libraries, I'll add JAPI. All right. So now errors have gone. So what this web project has is a welcome file index. This project doesn't have a JSF code completion validation enable completely. Uh, so you can skip or enable JSF completion. So there is some fix finish, that's fine. All right, yeah, I'll just minimize this. Let's look at the source. So this time we have um, view as an h link, edit as an h link, and delete as command link. Well, if you look at the action, it's directly manipulating things. Um, we'll see what's a better approach. And then we have the existing add view all stuff. Um, Another thing is that when you use a command button, uh, you really don't need a parameter to pass. You do a parameter passing when you do a get request. This is submitting a form. Buttons, command buttons, they are generally to submit a form and to do a specific action. So they don't need parameter. So, and then you have another division here that says, so in the next division here, you have add and view, and then you have search by ID, search by budget, and this is select one menu, select from the contact people, and you have a command button to search by uh, contact. So this is basically you're searching or you're calling this method here. Look, the thing is that when you do a command button, you really don't need to pass a parameter here, because in the if you need to pass a parameter, you pass it in the function of the manage bin that you're calling, just like this. Okay, cool. And then you have the web page preview with the loan payment calculation. Uh, you see, one side you have principal, and then on the parallel, the next column in the same row has property ID selection. Okay, so this is like one row. property selection and principal. So property selection and principal, this is one row. Okay, it's just designed that way. Similarly, select one list box, add compare, remove compare, and likewise. All right. So if you click on view this time, you will be taken to the detail page. Faces detail with a parameter in the get request with the index of the property. So in the detail page, you will be property controller manage bin will be called, and the details of that property is displayed. And once you display all the properties, so it's a form you're trying to because it's just a display page, there is nothing really you can action, but we'll see. Okay. And ideally, if you don't have anything edit to do, any function to call, you better use a h link and go back. And yeah, so let's have what we have in the manage beans is something very similar to what we have discussed. Um, However, two things here. One is um, the compare bin. All right, the search thing is a different manage bin. So if you see, if you do command and hover over here, you'll see it will directly take you to the search property manage bin, which is in Tutex controllers. Here, search property. So this specific manage bin, uh, if you see, where is that? Search property has got a constructor. In the constructor, it is fetching the property application, and we know what it updates. It basically updates the list of the properties which is being displayed before, and the value that you actually uh, that's what it shows when you do view all. And in the search property, search by integer, when you basically put a number there and do search by id, basically it calls search property by id, and it calls app search property by id, and app is property application. App is property application, and basically it goes to property application. Where is it? So open. So there is two things you see: declaration and implementation. So declaration means it is an interface where this was declared, and property application, and implementation means where it was implemented. That means this is directly an implementation class where the lists are stored. All right. Okay, let's look at one more example where search property by budget, and you pass whatever value you pass here in the text box. If you go to preview, whatever you pass here in the text box is little up. Yeah, Here you enter a money, search by budget. It basically filters the property based on your budget and updates this list here, and that specific list is displayed here. Okay, so that's how it happens. There's no bean usage here at the moment. Okay, we have seen how the loan manage work in the first week. Let's try to see uh, the property uh, best property, the best per room. So you see this best per room command button there. So once you click, property manage bin best per room method is uh, executed, and it will return you the page, the best per room. So here, best per room is displayed. So uh, once, if you go to the implementation of it, you'll come here in the best per room. What it does is it is inside property managed pane, which is like the controller for the property page, index page, and it calls a method from compare property. If you recollect few minutes back, compare property is an interface which is implemented by the EJB uh, here. Compare property is the interface here, compare property, and it was implemented by the EJB here, compare property session bin, and this specific EJB was actually injected into this manage bin using @EJB. So @EJB injects the session EJB bin into the manage bin, and then it calls compare property. So once it injects, so what happens? Let's take a step back. Before we actually call this, we click on best per room. What we do is actually we do add compare. So when we do add compare, we are basically adding the property, add compare, add property ID. So whatever property ID that you have entered here, and when you click on add compare, it is adding into, like, it's calling the interface add property and search property by selected ID. So based on the selected ID from the value in the manage bin, uh, it is fetching select property by ID. It is fetching, so whatever you have entered here, uh, sorry, entered here, select property ID is stored here, selected ID. All right, and then when you do add compare in add property ID, it is using that, because this is a managed bin, right? Selected ID is a property of the managed bin. So if you see selected ID, it's the attribute of the managed bin. And when you do add property, it is calling the session bin or the EJB and calling the EJB method. So basically EJB is injected into this manage bin, and this manage bin calls uh, this search property by ID inside itself. So search property by ID, sorry, where is that? Yeah. So it will basically pass that ID, and from the property repository, it's returning that property object, and then it is passing into add property ID and add property of the compare property. So if I click on here, there is two things: declaration and implementation. Declaration is the interface, which is in here, and implementation is in the EJB. So if I do open declaration, you see it's the interface, and if I do open implementation, is the EJB. All right. So in this EJB, I just talked to you about there is a set of property, and once add property of the compare property is called, the EJB own attribute set of properties is added with the property that was fetched here. So the property that was returned by this function was added into this specific set. All right. So you keep on adding 1, 2, 3 properties, and then when you do best property, best per room, it calls the same EJB's implementation best per room, and gets the ID of the best per room, and set it to the best per room in the manage pane or the controller. And then you see there is the thing that it is returning back to the index page. This is what controllers do after performing the logic. It goes back to a specific page. So once it goes back to again to the index page uh, index page best per room attribute is already set. All right. So in the index page, now here it displays best per room attribute, and that's how you will see the best per room value here. Okay, enough talking. Let's get this thing going. I'll just close all this. All right. So to run this, I will build an enterprise archive, new project, Java EE, enterprise application project, week 3 demo app. Next, I'll use all the 3 modules and then finish. All right. Okay. So what I do now is I'll just run it on the server. Yeah. You can see things starting up. While it does, I always keep an eye on the server logs because that's the most important thing. Any exceptions or any error, you'll always find it here. So just keep an eye here. It looks like nothing issue there, so it's publishing. So you can see the progress of stuff from here. It's preparing. Okay. Ooh, cannot deploy these details. EJB content initialize error. Please see the server log for more details. Okay. Let's look at the server logs. Again, the server started. Da, 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 da. So if you have any exception error, Just have a look at your server log and you'll know what happened. So these are all, look at the things. It should be at the down. Okay. Uh, Error while binding JNDI name. Compare property. Where is it? EGB container initialize an error. EGB compare this. Name already bound. Use rebind to override. Name already bound. Okay. So you cannot deploy. Uh, so EJB, the beans, they have a name, right? So in the same domain, you cannot have multiple EJB running with the same name. I mean, uh, from one project for a specific EJB instance, you can have multiple instances running, but you cannot have in the EJB container same bean from different project running. So because before I did this, I was trying out. So uh, you might see there are other projects deployed there. You see, uh, week 3 task A was my test where already had uh, it already had that compare property bean. Okay, so now it cannot bind the JNDI name, same name with this specific class because it's the same name, right? So it is having exception. So you cannot have multiple beans deployed in the server with the same name. So what I'll do is I will undeploy this, and this is also not important. I will undeploy it. So now it's okay. And before I proceed, I will just delete yes, and then I will project. I don't need to clean again, but yeah, I'll just clean and deploy, run it again. All right. So it is doing the republish. Okay. So to republish, to run as, before I republish, let me just remove this one as well so that I'll republish. Okay, so under deployed application, I really don't have anything that's conflicting at the moment. I have something else, but that's not important. I'll just remove it anyways. Now it's clean, nothing is running in the server, and now I can go ahead and run on the server. Look at the console. Okay, now it started running, so easy peasy, so it's all good. So if you look at the server or refresh it, it should be okay. So it did not refresh, so I'll just file recent open server logs. Cool. Now everything got deployed, no issues. Okay. So there are some request warnings. So it says request path begins with one or more occurrences of the faces sublet path mapping slash faces. Uh, differs from the bundle. That's fine. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Uh, look, I am not a fan of using this Netscape navigator here for any purpose. I'll simply open the URL, copy the URL, and open a web browser. I'll just use the Chrome browser and then hit enter. Now you can see things here. So if I just simply say select property ID 1, so 1 is added, and then 2, add compare property. It is basically what it happens if you see is it's taking that input and putting into that list in the EJB bean, and then when I say best per room, it displays what's the best per room. Uh, so you can view the details here, do the logic, price divided by the room, and come out what's the best per room. You can see. All right. So again, you can search by ID here, search by budget here. Uh, let's say 2, search by ID. The same page, all 2, and then no, I give a budget like search by budget. You see what everything below that comes up, um, and then I can select by the search contact. Make it 0 actually. It's taking or search contact. You can select something else, passing on the ID and getting things. All right, cool. So view all, and yeah. So this is something what we have been doing. Uh, I was talking to you about the command button in the detail page, right? So, so if you click on view, that's right. We are in the faces detail with property ID 1, and that's good. So when we cancel, it goes to the index page, but it remains faces detail. Um, let's have a small look. Okay, so in the detail page, it's actually submitting a form. We really don't need a form here, but even if we have, it's just simply navigating back to the index page. It's a command button. I'll prefer have a H link there. Let me see what I have. Is I prefer instead of this, uh, I'll have H link here, and I don't need to pass a parameter when I'm going home, because index is my home page. I can simply go to home. It's fine. And right, so if I have made a change, I need to deploy the incremental change, otherwise it won't reflect. So if I go to view, detail page, cancel, still detail, so I need to redeploy it. So this is an hyperlink uh, that basically has the value close, and then when you click on it, it goes back to the index page. And because it's class button, it looks like a button. Doesn't matter if it has to, it doesn't need it has to be a command button, so it will still look like this, but it will have work like a button. It will work like a link. What I will do, I'll stop the server, or maybe I'll simply undeploy this so it's clean. Now what I'll do, I'll select the archive project, clean all the projects, so all the projects will be clean, and then run. Basically I can go here and check. All right, so this is the new page. I go to view, it's fine. If I click on close, you see the link down here goes to the index page. Now it is fine. If you go to edit, also edit property ID, save and close. Let me have a look. Edit. So if I save, it updates the controller property, which is fine. And if I close, it simply needs to go back to the home page. You don't need to pass a parameter there. But yeah, you entirely got the point. So if I close, you don't need to put a parameter here. All right. So you need to decide where you need to put a parameter, with where you don't need to put a parameter. For command buttons, you pass parameters here, not f param there. So you got the point, right? The whole point. All right. So we covered all this. We covered the session beans and the annotations and other things like that. Cool. One improvisation that you guys can think of is when you add a property here, you can actually display or display somewhere below here the list of property selected, and show then you have one line below best per room. So when you click, actually you know what properties you are comparing. All right, that's quite nice stuff. One more thing from the last week I wanted to tell you. So uh, if you see here in your resources CSS part, uh, so error is not the actual class that makes error messages look red. So if you come here and you do submit, you see the red here, the H message is being shown. If you're not sure how to build the CSS, just right click, inspect, okay, and then hover your mouse here. All right, click inspect 2 times, so you'll see uh, this label one warning color white. This is basically this specific error message class. So what you see in add XHTML, uh, the error label warning is actually the text. But if you are actually looking at the background color, it's actually coming from the bootstrap. So if you want to override it, you can see if you want to change the background color to you know blue, you need to have this specific these lines of code, you know these lines of code in your CSS. So in the style, just add this, and then uh, you need to redeploy that again. The reason is, I just told you, you made a change, you need to publish it. So I made this style change here, label warning as white and the label warning background as blue. So you can actually have the same here itself. You don't need to write multiple times label warning. Okay. And then, yeah, so I'll just save this change in edit XHTML as well. I'll close this, and I'll have to undeploy it because it's a whole executable that has been deployed to the server. Deploy, select the enterprise archive, say project clean, clean all the projects, and then run. All right, so if you now we go to the page, and then I go to the add page, then I submit, I'll get this blue. All right, so this is how you play around and do things. So this time if I do edit and then if I say close, I come back directly to the index page without passing a property there. All right, cool. I think that will give you a good lead how to start. Thank you.